What's up? It's Tom. We're going to do a quick Twins 5, run through a handful of Twins topics that have been in the news here, starting off with the fact that the Twins have signed all their arbitration-eligible players. This is good news, I want to stress. It's great that all this is wrapped up. The Twins have cost certainty with all these guys. They know how much they're going to cost. And they even came in a little bit under projections, which, I guess depending on your perspective, if you want the Twins to have some spending room, that's certainly good. If you're one of those players who didn't get as much as they were hoping for, that's not so great. But the Twins came away with $2.4 million extra than what MLB Trade Rumors was projecting they'd have to spend on their arbitration-eligible guys. And just a point of clarification, you may see it worded that all of these guys agreed to a one-year contract. That doesn't mean they're going to be free agents next year. I think Willie Castro is the only one of them who will be a free agent next season. All the rest of the guys will be arbitration eligible once again next year, so they are still under team control. But again, from the team's perspective, having another $2.4 million than what MLB Trade Rumors would have projected is good. However, if ownership was remaining the same, I could see things creating some friction between Joe Ryan, Bailey Ober, and Royce Lewis, because that trio all got around $700,000 less than what MLB Trade Rumors' model would have predicted. Now, there's two things I want to point out here. It's good that the Twins have agreed to everybody. They're not going to an arbitration hearing with anybody. That always creates a lot of friction between the team and the player when that happens. So the Twins don't have to do that with anybody. This is great. This is good news. But I can't imagine those three very important players to the Twins are all that pleased that they had that big of a gap between what these models would have projected them for and what they ended up getting, but they agreed to it. They didn't say, no, this is my number, let's go to trial. They agreed to what the Twins offered them, so they can't be all that broken up about it. And it's not as if I'm gonna start a GoFundMe for Royce Lewis, who was a multimillionaire as a teenager or anything. So I'm not feeling too bad for those guys to be under their mark, but I do feel like if there was a continuation in ownership, that this trio of players could look at this as kind of a piece of the puzzle and saying, well, you guys didn't take care of me down when I was carving out my career. Why should I stick around now that I'm getting close to free agency? So that's just another one of many, many pieces of baggage that could potentially dissolve once the Pohlads are no longer owners, which, as reports, in case you missed it, should mention, talked about this in a previous Twins 5, but Dan Hayes of The Athletic has reported that there's chance that the ownership might change by opening day. So that piece also plays into this next topic we're going to discuss, is that Cody Christie of Twins Daily put out an article that was reacting to something that Jeremy Zoll said on an Inside Twins broadcast. Now, there's I'm not suggesting that Cody kind of twisted this in any way. Jeremy Zoll definitely, from what he said, it sounds like the Twins aren't completely handcuffed in terms of payroll. Now, let me read that quote that was sort of the head quote that Cody pulled out of that discussion. This is Jeremy Zoll, again, the Twins general manager, as Derek Falvey has stepped up. Derek Falvey, obviously, still, I'm sure, very, very involved in everything that the front office does. But Jeremy Zoll saying, we feel like the spot we're in is something that allows us to be creative and opportunistic. We're continuing to vet all the different options and ways that we can make the team better. But at this point, we don't feel like cuts are in order from a overall payroll perspective. Just working to find ways to explore every opportunity to do the best we can. Now, yeah, when you hear that, you hear, oh, so they don't have to cut payroll. That's definitely a conclusion that we can take away from that Jeremy Zoll quote. On the other hand, if we sort of think about it a little bit deeper, like what do you expect him to say? We need to cut $6 million. Like, he's not going to do that, because even if the Twins do need to cut some payroll in order to open some spending room, you wouldn't want to really necessarily put that out there because it might hurt your discussions in a Christian Vasquez trade, in a Chris Paddock trade, whatever kind of trade ideas that might create some money. You don't want to really put it out there that, oh yeah, where our backs are against the wall, we're desperate to dump any of this money. So it's interesting. It could come to fruition because, again, being that there is this potential, it's not an expectation, but a potential that the Twins might have new owners by opening day, and that there is a robust market. That was another thing that Dan Hayes reported on, that there is a robust market per his source, which was a industry source. It wasn't like the poll ads or anything. If you can think about it that way, maybe you could think about the poll ads as sitting owners could view this and say, you know what, it's not going to be our money. And it's not as if the Twins need to spend an exorbitant amount of money to fix some of these problems that they have. So, maybe Derek Falvey and Jeremy Zoll can get through to the poll ads and be like, another $15 million, another $10 million, another $5 million. I mean, Carlos Santana signed for around $5 million last year. That was a great addition. Any little extra could really help this team out a lot. And you guys, you poll ads aren't going to be paying for it anyway. So help us out. The new guys coming in, whoever the new owners are, they're going to want a good team. So that's going to help them too. It just helps everybody. And understanding that, sure, you're not comfortable yourselves pushing the payroll beyond this point, but it ain't going to be your money anyway. So what I think might fuel the fire of those conversations is that if some really talented players are sitting out on the market longer than expected, we're not there yet. It's a little bit premature to talk about this, but there are reports that Anthony Santander, Jack Flaherty are potentially exploring short-term deals, and Pete Alonso apparently has approached the Mets and kind of pitched them on like a somewhat of a similar Carlos Correa's first Twins contract, where it was a 3-year deal with multiple opt-outs. So, Jeremy Zoll specifically said, get creative. Those sound creative to me. We've seen the Twins do this with Carlos Correa. I don't think any of us were expecting the Twins to sign a dude to a $30 million contract at that time. So, no, sitting here today, I wouldn't say I don't have any expectations that the Twins are going to enter like the Anthony Santander or Pete Alonso or Jack Flaherty market, but there's always a chance. You never know. And if the poll ads get really confident that they're not going to be the ones on the hook for this money, and really confident that whoever the next ownership group is would be happy to improve the ball club, even if it does cost them a little bit more money, I don't know. This timeline of the ownership change is accelerating quicker than I thought it would, and nothing's in stone, and that's important to keep track of. But I do feel like the way we're moving could possibly, even though the new owner will not be in place likely prior to opening day, it could possibly change the way the Pohlad family is viewing the offseason. Just want to throw that out there. We'll see what happens. It's kind of premature to get that deep into it. But next topic is we have another actual concrete Twins news item. We're desperate for anything, and this qualifies as a desperation nugget. But Darren Wolfson has reported that the Twins will be in attendance for Nick Anderson's showcase that he's going to throw. He's a free agent. Now, Nick Anderson, he was a former Twins farmhand. They signed him out at Indy Ball. They traded him. He went on to have some great years. His arm exploded, though, and then he's had kind of a tough go of it, up and down a bit since. So, he had a great showing, I think, in 2023 with the Braves. Last season, though, 4.04 ERA, 1.40 whip with the Royals prior to getting released by them. Signed on a minors deal with the Dodgers, got released by them, signed on another minors deal with the Orioles, never actually made it to Baltimore. So viewing this, I have to assume that the Twins are looking at Nick Anderson as a minor league signing. Usually if a guy's throwing a showcase, apparently only about 10 teams are expected to show up. I can't, unless the showcase goes incredibly well. And he looks like, prime Nick Anderson. Maybe he gets a major league deal then, but as things look now, I would imagine the Twins are there considering him as a minor league signing, especially since they're not all that desperate for right-handed bullpen help. Any help, you need a lot of depth. You go through a lot of arms. A lot of guys get injured, so I don't want to downplay, Nick Anderson. But and this is based on nothing but my speculation. I don't think that would be a big league deal. And there is no such thing as a bad minor league deal. So that would be an interesting ad. But speaking of big league deals, something to keep in mind now that the Diego Cartaya trade happened. The Twins have a full 40-man roster. Now, that's very easy to fix, and maybe if they were to, let's say, trade Christian Vasquez for like prospects, that would open up a spot. Same with Chris Paddock. That would open us up a spot potentially. But let's just say right now, for fun, their next addition that they make, they have to cut someone. Who would that be? That's an interesting conversation to have. You let me know who comes to mind for you. A couple of guys that I considered but then thought no were, Michael Tonkin kind of stood out to me, but he was one of those guys that they assigned a deal, an arbitration deal. They would have just non-tendered him if they weren't all that interested in Michael Tonkin. So that tells me that they want to keep him around. It is a modest salary, so they could DFA. I'm not saying that's impossible, but I just think if they would have not, it would have gotten to this point if they weren't all that interested in Michael Tonkin. Mickey Gasper, I don't think is like a slam dunk. He's definitely one of the last guys on the 40-man roster for me, but they gave up an actual asset for him in Giovanni Moran. That wouldn't make any sense to trade Giovanni Moran and then designate Mickey Gasper for assignment, potentially losing him for nothing. So I don't think it's going to be him. Matt Cantorino is the guy I think you got to think about, just because, would anybody touch him? Would anybody claim him? He's had so many injuries. Does anybody else want to keep him on their 40-man roster? My thought is probably somebody. There's a few really bad teams that are super desperate. Even though Cantorino has no track record, has been hurt a bunch, he is a super talented guy, and when he's healthy, his stuff is remarkable. He just can't stay healthy. So I eliminated him. I came to either Ronnie Henriquez on the pitching side or Michael Hellman among position players as the guy. With Henriquez, it's less about what I think about Ronnie Henriquez and more about the fact that he's out of options. So if you look at it and you're realistic about it, do you really think you're going to keep Ronnie Henriquez on the big league club all year? I think that's tough. Maybe. He pitched pretty good last year, but I think that's tough. And I think if you say no, then you say, well, if we're going to designate him for assignment eventually, might as well do it now. He would get claimed, I'm pretty sure. So that would be unfortunate, but that was kind of the guy on the pitching side to me. I do think, though, Hellman is probably more likely, and he would be the guy on the position side that I picked. Nothing against Michael Hellman, and he's a useful guy, being such a versatile player who plays both infield and outfield. Really handy guy to have around, but just sort of the odd man out here. In my opinion. So let me know what you think. Should reiterate, it might not come to this. Maybe the Twins don't ever, when they add, they also are trading someone away or something like that. But if it came down to it, what do you think? Anyway, that was the handful of topics. Thanks for checking this one out. Really appreciate you. We'll talk again soon.